Two rows.
It's really great to see everybody here.
So thanks everybody for coming. Did you introduce yourself?
Not yet.
Okay.
My name's Aaron. I'm a chiropractor here in Peru, and I just graduated in 2012, and I've been practicing here for 4 years. And ever since I was little, I had a passion for nutrition, and my motivation to go to chiropractic school came from my drive for nutrition. When I was little, my dad would come back from all of his continuing education hours. He's a chiropractor as well. And he would come back and tell me all these things that I'd learn things about food and about things that are in food we should avoid or we should find or whatever. And ever since then, I always had a thirst for learning more about it and getting a bigger viewpoint out of it. As we all know, nutrition is very complicated sometimes when it's explained certain ways. And a lot of times it's explained either from an incomplete perspective or there's commercial commercial stress and motivations behind some of the things that they're saying. So this is the food I'm selling and it's healthy for you. You don't know if it's true or not because there's money involved. So I am an unbiased perspective. I've been looking at it for a long time. I've been practicing it for a long time. And I'm also constantly trying to modify and not necessarily perfect, but to enhance my experience of life. And nutrition is a primary place to start. It's what builds our body. If we build our body out of junk materials, it's going to be a junk body. So that's where we want to go. Can I get a survey of the audience? How many people attend yoga classes here? Okay, almost everybody. Okay, and then I heard about this real food challenge. Anyone in here do that? Could someone tell me what that consisted of? Maybe one of you guys could tell me.
Eating whole plant-based.
Yeah, eating whole
Plant-based.
natural foods.
Okay.
So if you were going to eat anything like an animal product, it was encouraged to be natural, organic, non-GMO.
Oh yeah.
But a heavy emphasis on fruits, vegetables, whole grains. So eliminating processed foods, white flours, sugar, additives.
That's a great place to start. This actually will go in conjunction very well with that. It's very similar perspective, but we're gonna zoom out and look at it as a whole, and then we're gonna focus on some smaller pieces, and then bring them all together. So we have, do we have 90 minutes?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. Hopefully I can do it all in that amount of time, but if I go over it a little bit, don't be ashamed if you have to walk out, it's okay. But the rest of it will be on this video if you have to leave sooner, but I hope I don't take longer than 90 minutes. Okay. And I've done this since I was in school, just writing on either a whiteboard or a chalkboard. So this is like my native way of describing this. So actually, let's all close our eyes right now. And let's focus into our bodies. Let's feel how our bodies feel in this moment. Maybe you feel full from lunch, you have any? Is there a sense of well-being in your body? Is there pain? We're going to look at this sensation of our body in a non-partial way. Okay, we can open our eyes. You can see how it's easy to, once you get in that state, you want to stay there, and it's very big. When you open your eyes, you see how many little things are out there. So this is kind of where we're gonna go with this a little bit. We're gonna look at this really broad. So I'm gonna actually introduce you to a concept, an Eastern concept. But it's actually a concept, it's not necessarily a concept of spirituality, it's more of matter, actually, if you look at it a certain way. Okay, so yin and yang, how many people have heard about that? A couple. Do you guys know what it is? Can someone tell me what it is exactly? No one really knows what it is. So that's good, because I can tell you. So, and then we'll do yang here. So, I'm going to divide this in two. You see this symbol, how it has a dark side, has a light side, and then it has within it the other component. If you look at something on the surface, like for example, fire, it's hot and bright and everything like that. And you look at ice, it's cold and clear. You can compare two things with this, but within one is the other. So within fire creates water. It creates, when you burn things, it creates water. Within ice, there is movement, just like there is in fire. So this isn't on an end-all, be-all division here, but we can use it to kind of analyze things a little bit. So the yang, we're going to say the yang is masculine and the yin is feminine. Okay? And we're going to say bright, dark, warm, warming, cooling. And we can go forever and ever and ever with this. Within one is the other also. But this will apply to nutrition. At first it seems it's very, very broad. This applies to everything, actually. Everything we can see. Separating and unifying. Analyzing. Intuiting. Small and numerous. Large and singular. Let's start bringing these examples to life. Let's look at this example. Let's we see this here. We see this is how we were started, right? And the male cell is small and numerous, the sperm cell, and the egg cell is large and singular. So that's a really stark example. But let's look at it from a very broad universal perspective. Space is large and singular. Space is all one. It's all the same. You go into a room, the space there is the same as in another room. It's not, the quality is not different. Matter within space is small and numerous. We have atoms, we have molecules, and at every layer of scale, it looks small. So if you look at a galaxy from far away, it just looks like small particles swirling. Same with atoms. You look at them from our perspective, they look like small particles swirling. So our universe has this quality of masculine and feminine, yin and yang. We have the two genders. Bright and dark. Darkness, all darkness has the same, it has a sameness. You go into a dark room, it looks the same as another dark room. You go into a room with lights, sometimes you have colored lights, you have white lights, you have moving lights, they're changing. And that's another one that goes with this one here. Change. Change and constancy. And these two, within any living system, are oscillating. So let's say there's this imaginary 0 point or balance point, and they're oscillating like this. So we have this increase, growth, and we have this decrease, shrinkage. So let's look at a really easy example that all of you guys are doing right now, which is breathing. So you're breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, out. And as you breathe in, your air is filling your lungs, breathing out, it's contracting. And we're going to add this here, growth and shrinkage, or we'll say decay. So increase and decrease. Without one, you cannot have the other. So for example, like in our gardens, we have plants that are growing up, and then at the end of the season, they die and they go into the ground, decay, and all those nutrients come back up in the plants. And it goes like this, just like our breathing does. Our bodies do this, like our blood sugar levels throughout the day do this. Our activity levels, our brain activity throughout the day does this. So this is very helpful to understand this. When you're looking at food, you can kind of look at it in these kind of qualities, like comparing certain foods to others. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to unify this also with our societal viewpoints too. So actually, let's look at this side and just look at these words. Bright. He's a bright guy. We had a warm conversation. We analyzed the information. We had a lot of things. We bought a lot of things at the store. Things are changing. You know, a lot of times we like change. You know, it's good. And our company, look at our company. Look what it's doing here. It's growing. And in our society, we've been trained to believe that this side is very, very good and very important, and this side is not important or bad, or we just don't see it. Like, for example, you go into a room, and what do you notice when you walk in the room? Do you notice the space, or do you notice all the things in the room? Most of us notice the things. We don't notice the space, how much space there is. And neither is bad or good. It's just they need to flow just like this, evenly. But unregulated, one or the other, will cause a system of order to collapse. So our body is a system of order, and almost all of our levels are fluctuating like this. If we have one of them that decides to go this way or this way, we'll die. And the same goes with our society. Our society is it's an organism. And if we have one or the other, it will die. So we want to balance. So let's look at that example in the body. What about cellular growth? What if that happens? What would we call that? We have one cell that decides to grow out of control. What would we call that?
Cancer.
Yeah, cancer. Or our blood pressure goes up, like this, high blood pressure, and that can cause our arteries to burst. We can die from that. Or if it goes the other way, our blood pressure goes down and down. Like let's say I start losing blood, my blood pressure drops and drops and drops, and then I die. So either one is no good. Low blood pressure is like, oh, he's good. He's got low blood pressure. But if it's not within a certain range, then it's not going to be healthy. So there we go, balance, and this is actually kind of homeostasis here. Very important. I'm going to go on to the next point now. So we're going to focus I'm going to keep this up so you guys can still see it. So, we're basically trying to balance our bodies. If our body is healthy and in balance, our mind is going to be healthy. Our emotions are going to be healthy. Our interactions with other people are going to be healthy. If people in the community are healthy, we have a healthy community. Their interactions between each other are healthy. They're not fighting amongst each other. They're not talking bad about each other. They just feel good within, and then that goodness goes out. So your nutrition is not just you, it's everyone. You're helping everybody by doing these choices. Now, what I'm saying may not be exactly perfect, but focus in, just like when we started the class, focus in at different times and see if it resonates with you. If it resonates, it may have some element of truth. So, okay, now we're going to look at this from several different perspectives. I'm going to look at it from three main perspectives. It's nice that I have three markers here. And these are three things that some people don't know very much about, but we do know about the, since you guys, several of you guys took the Real Food Challenge, you kind of know about GMO, chemicals and things, so I'm not going to focus on that so much. Ideally, we would have food that has had no chemical intervention. So that's where we want to be. Things that are wild would have much less chemical interaction. Synthetic chemicals I'm talking about. We're made of chemicals, but they're biological and they're made from the earth. We don't want anything that's had the genes modified because the protein shapes will be alien to our bodies. And when that happens, when the proteins are alien to our bodies, we recognize them as foreign and our body attacks them. When they become part of our bodies, it attacks those strange proteins and we start having autoimmune diseases. But these three main points, people don't know that much about. So we're going to try and, each one of these, imagine as a yin-yang, and we want to balance each one of these. So omega-6, omega-3, fatty acids. We're going to go antioxidants, and then free radicals. And then we're going to go, we want to balance blood sugar. So we're going to try and balance carbs with other things like fats, fibers, and proteins. So those are our main perspectives that we're wanting to look at here. And when you make a choice, you want it to be balanced in these three things. And when it is like that, you can look at your entire meal that way. So certain foods they'll satisfy one and not the other, but you put other foods with them that go well until you get that middle, that perfect middle, which isn't always there, but if you can strive for it, it's really going to help. So this is our big picture perspective over here. Actually, I'm going to make sure it's still visible in the video. Okay, big picture view. Let's go to omega-6 and omega-3. And this really connects to societal things as well, why it's like this. So, make sure we've got this up here so we can see where we're going. Okay, so this is the white side is the yang, and this is the yin. So yang on this side will be our omega-6, and yin is our omega-3. Now, in nature, this omega-6 originates from the seeds of plants. And in nature, most times, the omega-3 originates from the green part, the green of the plant. Let's look at this symbol again here. We grind up flour, and what does it look like? Is it pale or is it dark, would you say? Should be dark, yeah, but let's compare that to the color of the leaves that were on the plant. Is it dark? Is the flower lighter than the leaves or darker? Lighter. Okay, so it's much lighter. It's pale. Now that'll go into our antioxidant talk too. But the seedy part is pale and yang, and the leafy part is dark and yin. You have heard of omega-3, but usually you hear about it in context of what? Where would you, what's a good source of omega-3 that you guys have probably heard about? Fish, yeah. Fish, they get it from algae. So the food chain in the ocean is very highly based on algae. So there's a lot of omega-3 fatty acids in seafood. They have very little access to seeds. There are some algae that produce omega-6, so they will have omega-6 in them, which they do need, and as do we, but they'll also have lots of omega-3s. Now, these omega-6s are pro-inflammatory. And these are anti-inflammatory. Omega-3s are anti-inflammatory. My handwriting's not that great, but you can hear what I'm saying. That's important. Inflammation. It's an inflammation. The center here is flame. Inflamed. When something is inflamed, it has it's warm, swollen, painful, etc. Warm, growing, and it produces a lot of stimulation. That's all yang. That's a yang excess. Inflammation is yang excess. You can have local inflammation, or you can have whole body generalized inflammation. I'm going to draw this separation again here. Our immune system, how do you think it detects things that needs to kill? If let's say a bacteria comes in, like this example is instead in a town. Okay, there's normal people walking around, and there's a thief walking around. How do the cops find him? They have to tell him apart from the normal people. That's what our body does too. They have to tell what is human, what's Aaron cells, and what is bacteria or virus. So we have to use distinction. So distinction, separation, and analysis. Separation and analysis. Our body analyzes everything that comes in. Okay? And I said, this can happen too much. So what if our bodies starts to overreact to pollen in the air, or cat dander and things like that? It reacts the same as it does to a bacteria or virus, as if it's going to kill it. Like when my body fights off bacteria, it fights it off to the death. Well, it does the same thing to cat dander and pollen if my overall predisposition to inflammation is too high. So allergies, things like that. Autoimmune disease is an extreme version of allergies. Not only is it attacking things that are not you, but not harmful, it's attacking you. So, and actually this has been linked to a lot of common diseases, like even heart disease, which let's say we'll get to that. Let's come back here though. So these anti-inflammatory things are unifying and intuitive. My intuition tells me that pollen and cat dander are not going to kill me. And the unity, if you can see unity, you can see unity even within bacteria. You can see life in bacteria. If I get so far this way, if I get too cool, I will let bacteria live in my house and kill me. So either one is not good. Too much of either one is not good. But a balance is great. Okay, so back to this. Now, we can see this, now seeds. Let's look at our food chain that we've created in our society. So what do you see growing all around in Indiana here? Corn and what else? Soybeans. Okay. That's the main food staple of all the animal products that are farm raised. Those are the two main things that are eaten. And those are both seeds. And they both contain high amounts of omega-6. And so this is the bottom of our food chain. And we can feed our corn and our soybeans to, we can feed it to cows, we can feed it to pigs, chickens. And we can actually even feed it to fish. Farm-raised fish are fed feed that contains this. Now, what do we get from cows? We get beef and we get milk. We get pork from the pigs. We get eggs and we get chicken, the meat. And then we get fish meat. From the milk we get butter, yogurt, yada, yada, yada. And look at all this that we've created just from corn and soybeans. It's all great. This is all, look at all this variety. But it's all the same because it came from the same thing. in the wild, there's this intricate network of relationships with like bees and flowers and fruits and things eating the fruits and things leaving their droppings near the trees, and there's this huge network. And we think that we know more than nature, and we've done this. And it's showing up in our bodies. So now we're going to see what happens when we have so much of this, and what is the source of this? Where do we see this in the store? So any oil that was a seed, that came from a seed, is going to be high in omega-6. So soybean oil and corn oil are obviously going to be high. And what do you think these two oils? These two oils are the most commonly used oils in restaurants. And they have very high levels of omega-6. Now, let's look at a ratio here. What ratio of inhalation and exhalation would I want for harmonious breathing? Would I want 2 times more inhalation than exhalation? Or would I want about equal of both, right? Does that make sense? Okay. Okay, so we want an equal proportion. That's, in science, they use that as a 1-to-1 ratio. So in a balanced situation, we have 1-to-1. But I've drawn some ratios up here of these oils, 30-to-1 and 50-to-1 for these other oils, omega-6 to omega-3. That is very highly predisposing the yang. And this is not bad necessarily, but it is bad when that's all we are taking in. The butter and things, the fat from these animals is going to have a pretty high ratio too. We'll just say any animal product that has been fed corn and soybeans has about down, it could be down to 10-to-1 or up higher than 15-to-1. We'll just say 15-to-1 ratio is kind of an average for these people or these animals that are only getting this. They're not only is their omega-6 to 3 ratio out of balance, but they have very low amounts of antioxidants, and their bodies are constructed in a way that makes our it makes us hungry because we're not getting a lot of the other things that we need. So, these are very high ratios. Now let's look at certain things that are balanced already. So this, I'm kind of putting, this side actually has balanced things on it, but in relation to these, they're more yin than these. So let's look at, now I said omega-3 was the source, or the greens were the source of omega-3. So if we're talking about, let's let go of the fish for now. Let's look at some other animal that eats plants a lot, that we consume a lot of. How about this one? The cow, it normally eats grass, right? They eat grass, and grass has the blades and it has the seeds with it. If you look at grass, you'll see these little stalks with seeds on them. So they're eating both of those in the field. So actually cows, their bodies get a pretty even ratio from doing that. So beef or dairy that has been it's only grass-fed, grazed, versus the feedlot cow, the grazed cow has a 1-to-1 ratio of omega-6 to omega-3. So, and that's the natural state of the cow. It's not going to, in nature, would it ever find as much grain as they are fed in the feedlots. Never would that happen. Okay, let's look at another one. Pigs are an omnivore. If you let them in the wild, if you let them go, they'll eat walnuts, they'll eat roots, they'll eat bugs, they'll eat whatever they can find. And basically any wild animal, wild game, has a similar ratio. especially if it's somewhere where there isn't a lot of agriculture. Around here, the game has a higher level of omega-6 because of all the fields that are around. Even like squirrels and birds and deer are eating a lot of corn in Indiana. But if you go out west where there's just prairie, it's going to be much closer to this here. Chickens. So you hear of, this is beyond organic here. Organic means there is no GMO and they don't use synthetic chemicals. They can still use pesticides that are plant-based or any naturally occurring molecule. So they still can use pesticides and things like that. These things almost are not, this doesn't apply to them. These are beyond organic. Chicken that is pastured, it's also known as a lot of times free range. But there's a loophole with this word free range. And our food system creates all these little loopholes because they want to sell. And they can call something free range if it has a certain amount of square footage of an area with no ceiling. So even if there's no ceiling in this room and it's total dirt, and the chickens go in there, that's a building where they go in, they come out to this area, and this is all dirt, they can call it free range. But it does not mean that the egg has had any access to greens. If it's pastured, if they say pastured, that means it has access to pasture or grass, and that has a similar ratio. And then the fish, obviously, if it's wild, if it's in the ocean, has that same ratio, similar ratio. So this is one of our lenses here. If we're avoiding things that are processed food tends to separate things. It usually has a lot of grain constituents in it. They separate it into little bits, and then they bring it back together as a candy bar or a granola bar or whatever, or anything else like that. Salad dressing, peanut butter. Like the peanut butter at the store, Jif, is like 20 different things or 10 different things. That's not just peanuts. So the Real Food Challenge really goes very well with this. And if you're focusing on these things while you're looking for your food, it's really going to help you. So now let's go to the next point. Well, before I go on there, does anyone have any questions about omega-3 and omega-6 that are like burning in your minds? Alright. Some of the health benefits that have been noticed by omega-3. It's a fatty acid that these are both essential fatty acids. Our body needs both of them to regulate our immune system. And they both actually work on this, they act on the same enzyme in our body. The same enzyme that ibuprofen, aspirin, Tylenol, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, NSAIDs they call them, they act on the same enzyme as NSAIDs. And when our body, let's imagine there's a chain of events, and there's a faucet right here. You can turn it up, or you can turn it up, or you can turn it down. Turn it up, that allows the chain of events to occur. Turn it down, that prevents it. The end result of that enzyme is inflammation. Non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs will go and just like put a kink in the hose right there, and they stop this entire thing for about 6 hours. But those molecules are toxic to our liver and our kidneys. And our kidneys says, get these out of here. So within 6 hours, they're gone from the body. Omega-6 turns it up. Omega-3 turns it down. Now, we're eating this all the time, it's really turned up. And our body's in a lot of pain. We got a lot of warm, swollen, painful areas in our body. And that's why people are taking these drugs in such high quantities. Is partially due to this.
Aaron, could you talk about like plant sources for omegas, like
Yeah.
walnuts and?
Yes. Yeah. Good point. There's actually several different kinds of omega-3, and I think they're all important. There's DHA, EPA, and then ALA. Okay. These are both from animals. This is from plants. And actually, well, these are all from plants actually. But in the highest proportion, these are found in animals. Because the animals concentrate them up the food chain. These are usually converted to a usable form within the body. But these two, DHA and EPA, are native to our bodies. We need them, and they're important for inflammation, regulating brain chemistry, a lot of other things, which you hear a lot of. Our body, before it can use ALA, has to convert it. These are usable already. And there's an enzyme that converts this ALA, and as we age, it decreases in effectivity. ALA is present in, it's present in walnuts, chia, flax, several other things. Actually, almost any nut, there's a tiny amount of ALA in it. These two probably have the most ALA that I know of, that's commonly sold. But again, these are seeds, and seeds have a high proportion of omega-6s in them. So these actually have a 10-to-1 ratio of omega-6 to omega-3. And the omega-3 that's present in there is ALA. And ALA, which is great, I still believe that we need it. But only about 5% of it is converted to DHA and EPA. Now this may not be true that our DHA and EPA is the only usable form. It may not be true, but that's what I'm reading now. It may not be. But ALA, which is present within the seeds usually, is very good for our bodies, but it's not going to supply us with DHA and EPA, which DHA is very important for the brain. EPA is very important for the heart. A deficiency of DHA causes a lot of problems that are linked to low dopamine levels and serotonin levels, like depression, and also strange fluctuations like bipolar. So, very good point. I'm glad you brought that up, because that brought up a lot of
I've got some other
things.
questions.
Sure, go ahead.
First of all, DHA, EPA, ALA.
Yes. What do they stand for?
Well, that and what exactly are they?
Okay.
Are they fats? Are they proteins? What?
They are fats. They are
Okay.
omega-3 fats.
All right, they are
These
fats.
are all omega-3 fats. Yes. Good question.
Okay. So
Okay.
the ALA, we have to convert
Yeah.
in
and
some way in our body. And you say as we get older, we're not able to convert
Yeah.
it as easily?
it goes down. So even as a young person, you have like a certain like 5% gets converted, but as you age, it goes down even more.
Okay.
So people like that helps me elaborate my point. You hear like flaxseed, buy the flaxseed oil because it's got the omega-3 that you need in it. It does have omega-3 in it, but it's not as effective as you can get algal omega-3, which is a plant-based. That's another one. Algal oil has DHA and EPA in it. It's a vegetarian source of it. That's where the fish are getting it. But if you see chia or flax and they're marketing it as omega-3 and that's going to satisfy your omega-3 needs, not true, in my opinion.
One other question.
Yeah.
Yin yang,
Mhm.
inflammation.
Mhm.
Okay. So a certain amount of inflammation.
Is necessary.
Okay, and why?
Because let's say if I turn off the spot, let's say for some reason your body could not clear Tylenol. You took Tylenol, it turns off the enzyme, and this chain is now no longer happening. Inflammation is necessary for our bodies to fight infection. So if you had a cut, or if you got a cold, or anything like that, and you had no inflammation, your body would very quickly find its end. So that's why we need inflammation. So, but we can assume that we are getting enough omega-6 because even the wild animals have it. It's see this 1-to-1 ratio means that there's equal proportions of both. This one just has way more of the other one. Does that make sense? So it's really unlikely that we would ever over find the omega-3.
So do you personally recommend like the omega-3 supplements? If you're not getting
I
a lot?
do, yeah. But as we all know, if it's from the food, it's the best. But it's hard to find this kinds of food here. And also notice that the good sources of the animal-based omega-3 are all, they're all animal products, and they have to be cooked, usually. And some people eat raw fish and all these things, which is fine and great, and you probably get more out of it if you do that. But when you cook this here, the omega-3, let's just say this is a fatty acid here, and these are named based on where their double bond is. 1, 2, 3. That's an omega-3 fatty acid. Oxygen can get to this very easily and break it down. Once that happens, it's useless. So when we cook things, we're exploding the amount of oxygen that's exposed to the food. There's so much oxygen, and it degrades these. So supplementation is great because they put things that prevent the oxidation with it. Usually, like for example, krill oil has the antioxidant already in the oil. Like krill oil is red. That's going to segue really well into the antioxidant thing. Krill oil is red and it has the antioxidants. It absorbs oxygen before it can get to that double bond and make it rancid, basically. So I do recommend supplementation. Fish oil does not have very good amounts of antioxidants in it. So usually a diet that's rich in antioxidants, if you're supplementing fish oil, is very good. Now let's go to the antioxidants. Got me in the mood.
I think there's another piece of paper under the yin yang original
Oh,
too,
cool.
so you have two more.
Cool. These are really handy. Okay, Now, let's do this again. Okay. Yang, yin, the dark side, the light side. Which side do you think has, I'm going to say that antioxidants are pigments, and they'll stain you. Like, even our clothes are dyed with antioxidants. Okay, so you look at, let's say, a beet that's really dark red. Those are antioxidants. Those colors are, there's lots of antioxidants within the colors. So dark colors. And then paleness. Let's compare that beet to a white potato, which has more antioxidants. The beet, obviously. Okay. Now, antioxidants. And free radicals. Okay. So, an antioxidant, and I'll just write in here, oxidant. Antioxidant resists oxidation. So, what is an oxidant? Let's take this black shirt and let's pour bleach on it. It turns white. So, bleach is a good example of an oxidant. It is a free radical. Or what's another one that actually is present within our bodies that I could pour on this that would turn it white? Peroxide does the same thing. Peroxide is actually one of our most common free radicals. Free radical, I'm kind of going to get a little scientific, but most in nature, imagine these are oxygen atoms, and you see oxygen written like this usually in science literature, O2. It means there's two atoms of oxygen. Oxygen by itself has a free electron that it likes. When there's an unpaired electron, it's kind of unstable and it wants to grab a hold of something, anything that it can find, and form a bond with it. And usually, oxygen does that with itself, like that. But this isn't as good as some other bonds. So, if, for example, I drew that down there, you don't have to have any chemistry knowledge for this, but this is our omega-3 here, and we have oxygen, which is bound to itself, but it finds that, and I think oxygen would rather be bound to carbon than it would to oxygen. So these are carbon atoms. It will want to break that bond and peroxidate it. And when that happens, you have a rancid fat. The rancid fat, it has a smell. You can smell, like rancid fish has a smell. You can tell if your body doesn't want to eat rancid fish. It's like, oh gosh. But it's because we know already that we need omega-3s, but we know that we should not eat that. It'll make us sick in more ways than one. Let's say it doesn't give us a bacterial infection, but all those rancid oils in there will expose us to lots of free radicals. And, okay, so you kind of have an idea of what free radicals are. They bleach things, they turn them pale, but any yang energy is going to create free radicals. It's the mother of them. So, yang energy, heat, light, and we'll just say air too. These three things will create free radicals. So now we're going to imagine this is the color green, but it's not. So here's a leaf. and it's nice and green. We just picked it out of the garden. And there's a certain amount of time, of oscillations, that after a certain amount of oscillations, it'll go from this nice green leaf to a pale brown leaf. And that depends on how much heat, light, and air we expose this to. So at room temperature, let's say we've picked our whatever it is, a piece of kale out of the garden, and we just set it on the counter at 70 degrees. Well, first of all, let's put it in the fridge first. Put it in the fridge at 38 degrees, and it lasts, let's say, maybe even 2 weeks in there. So it's a dark place, it's cool, and the air is still. So it lasts a long time in there, 2 weeks before it turns into this pale brown thing. Oxygen is constantly exposing it in this fridge, so it does get some exposure. Let's leave it out on the counter at 70 degrees. If we do that again, wait till it turns brown. Let's say 3 days or 4 days till it turns into this crispy brown dry leaf. Now let's put it outside in the sun at 90 degrees in the sun. Maybe even just 12 hours or a full day, something like that. These are just estimates, but it makes sense in your mind when you can see that. You've probably done a lot of these things. You've forgotten to put something in the fridge, or you've left it in the fridge until it turns brown, or you leave it out in the sun, or you steam it. Let's say we put it in a steamer, 210 or 12 degrees, until it turns to brown mush. We'll just say 1 hour. Let's put it on the frying pan, 400 degrees. Till you get a brown, crispy leaf. Maybe even less than that, 15 minutes to half an hour. So this tells you how this heat, air, and light is connected to this. So this brings to value for refrigeration. When you refrigerate your food, you extend the lifespan of your antioxidants. If you leave it out on the counter, it's going to mature and go to that brown, pale state where there is very little antioxidant benefit. Green tea versus black tea. It's the same plant. Green tea has more antioxidants than black tea because black tea is oxidized. It's turned brown. Okay. So now free radicals in our food. We cook our food. We've been cooking for the last 2,000 years or more over a fire or whatnot, but we're cooking and accelerating this process. Sometimes if it's for a brief instant, it can actually increase the bioavailability. So a very light steam to a green for maybe just even a minute will break open the cells so that right when you eat it, you get more antioxidants than you normally would have eaten if it was just a raw thing. But the raw thing has much more vitamin C, much more this, much more that, and has more antioxidants. So when you cook something, you get a benefit, but you also trade something away. And that's always how it works. You can never have a trade or something, a change that is all good. There's always a trade. So when you cook something, you gain some more calories and you lose some antioxidants or vitamins. So, like for example, if I ate a raw potato right now, I would probably be able to digest half to a quarter of the amount of calories that's actually there. I cook the potato, I get more of that. So that's how it goes. So Now, tell me what an antioxidant is again. Okay, we don't have a good picture of it yet. So, it is a staining pigment. That's the bottom line. If it's natural, that's better. But this synthetic dye on my shirt is a staining pigment. It is an antioxidant. But our bodies cannot do anything with that. So we want a staining pigment from a plant. You go to the store, you look at everything that's there, just a rainbow of colors. All those colors are different kinds of antioxidants. Very simple. And it's as simple as that. That's all you gotta do. And maybe choose certain colors, different times of the day, or different time, not the same one every single time. Because we are omnivores, we're not used to eating the exact same thing. We're not like the koala, which eats the eucalyptus leaf every single day, and that's all we eat. We've evolved eating lots of different things. Now, let's look at free radicals in restaurants, the creation of them. So remember, one of the fastest ways we can create free radicals is this 400 degrees, a higher temperature, right? Temperature and time compound the amount of free radicals that we're going to create. In the restaurants where they fry the food, tell me, how often do they change the oil in there? You don't even know. Well, they're supposed to do it once every 2 weeks. Okay, so even if they're doing it right, they're at 400 degrees. Let's say they're only open 8 hours a day. So let's cut it down to, or let's say they're open 12 hours a day. Let's cut it down to half. So 400 degrees at 1 week. And it took us maybe a week at room temperature to turn our thing brown. How much more free radicals are we doing if it's exponentially higher at this temperature? So when we do this to our bodies, when we load it with free radicals, one thing we do is we accelerate the aging process. Basically, your body has a lifespan. We all have this lifespan to our bodies, and we're exposing ourselves to oxygen naturally. Oxidation is important. We need it to respire, to allow ourselves to burn calories. We need oxygen. So we need oxidation to happen. And it's just the fact that we are oxidating, it also means that we're alive. We have that fire burning. And that flame burns out after a while. The hotter you burn it, the sooner it's going to burn out. So antioxidants, when they're present, you have a slow, constant burn. If you don't have any antioxidants, you're going to have all these flares and problems. So let's look at it at the DNA level. So we have chromosomes, 46 chromosomes in each cell, but this is only one. And on the chromosome, we have these little things called telomeres. And every time the cell divides, those get a little shorter. And as we age, our telomeres get shorter and shorter. They've seen that higher exposure to oxidation will shorten these telomeres, and the signs of aging come much sooner. So that's a scientific way of looking at it. Okay, let me see. So I also said here, I don't know if the camera can see this, but the corn oil and soybean oil, which have very high levels of omega-6, they're very, very commonly, almost exclusively used in the restaurant fryers, especially in America. And then we're doing this, we're frying at this high temperature. So they're high in omega-6, stimulating inflammation. and they're loaded with these high amounts of free radicals, which basically are like bullets coming into our body, tiny ones. A free radical can react not just once, but it basically, when it reacts with something, it creates another free radical, and then it creates another one. It creates a chain reaction. So let's say this free radical comes in contact with your cell membrane. It can break a cell membrane. It can destroy DNA. It can cause mutations in DNA. It can wreak havoc. But all of this havoc, let's say we're doing this on a huge scale. We eat the greasy French fries, and all these free radicals come into our body. When we digest, what's the first thing that it comes in contact with when we eat food? Our stomach, right? And all these free radicals touch the stomach walls, and they're basically, that fire that was put into the oil is transmuted is sent to our stomach cells, and they experience irritation. Your stomach gets irritated, you produce acid. So people get acid reflux. Okay, all that grease goes into our small intestine, we absorb it into our bloodstream. Goes straight to the heart. All those free radicals touch the heart, and they burn the heart. And they go into the arteries and into the tiny microcirculation of the brain all throughout the body, and they're burning in the inside of the arteries. So the arteries get damaged. And then when we damage ourselves, what do we get? Let's say you cut yourself. You cut yourself and you wait 2 weeks, you have a scar left behind. We're micro-scarring our arteries when we do this. So that's why you hear about fat and cholesterol being the source of all this stuff. It's not necessarily that. It's damage that's covered up with scar. And scar often has fat and cholesterol associated with it. So,
And Aaron,
yeah.
whenever you were talking about the ALA,
Yes.
We're slowing down and aging,
Yes.
producing that.
Uh-huh.
And then if we continue with that kind of diet,
Uh-huh.
we're just like suffocating
Oh, yeah.
everything. And then
Literally.
you wonder why so many people go to so many doctors and I have this pain, or this hurts. And then they give you 2 different medicines to do this. And then that's slowing it down even
Keep going,
more.
keep doing what you're doing, but take this pill.
Yeah, that domino effect.
Yeah.
Instead of, like cleansing it all out and just start feeding right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. That's it. So, okay, let's go to the last point. Any questions about this? I feel like,
I think it's
does
important.
everyone know what a free radical is and how they're created in our food? Pretty much. Okay, and what an antioxidant is and where it is in our food. Okay.
Just to touch on what Denise said, that when you go to a physician for whatever, they are not schooled in nutrition. Maybe
No.
one class in all of their years. If you find somebody that is schooled, that would be the exception to the rule.
Right.
So, like what Aaron and the knowledge that he's passing on is not something you're going to receive from a medical
That would be
doctor.
so nice if you went to a doctor and he says, okay, well, you're eating this and this and it's
Right.
causing this, so eliminate that and go.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
just so
It's not
cool.
even in their frame of reference.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Most doctors, they're MDs.
Right.
If you can find a doctor who's a DO,
Right.
they tend to have more of a holistic approach.
They do, yeah.
So instead of, medicating,
Right.
find a doctor who's, so-and-so DO versus
Okay.
MD.
Okay.
That,
Individual, but
Mhm.
lots
That
of
brings up a
people
point
holistic.
I'd like to share too about that. There's a DO that I like to get a lot of good information from. Mercola is his name. He's a DO. And he has a lot of articles. If you want to learn more, go to his website and do a search, and you can find anything you want to know. He talks about different salts and vitamins and why. He explains why very well, and that's one of the things that I feel is important. If if you don't understand why, there's no impact to your decision. There's no reason not to eat grease. You know, it doesn't make sense. Like, it tastes good. Why shouldn't I eat it? So, all right. And we'll just stick this down here. Okay. Our last one is the carbs. Balancing the carbs, and we have 15 minutes, so that's good. This one isn't as long. It's pretty simple. Oh, and we have one sheet of paper left. That's perfect. I won't use it. I'll just use this one. It's not so huge. Okay, so now carbs. Say if I do these both very well, but I don't do this one, I'm still gonna have spikiness in here. So let's. Has anyone ever eaten what they thought was a good breakfast, and then 2 hours later they're starving?
All the time.
Okay. If you did that, what you did was you loaded up with very easy digestible things that were burned and or stored very quickly within a short period. So that's very, very common, and that's actually very common with conventional the conventional low-fat diet. All that, they emphasize carbs over everything else. And why do they do that? It's actually because that's what we have available in our food system the most, is carbs. We can grow a huge field of corn, and we can extract high fructose corn syrup out of it in mass quantity. We can grow a giant field of wheat and make tons of flour. But fat is rare, and so is protein. It's rare. But it's only rare because if we demanded it, it would be produced. But there's a control on the information. It's maybe not an intentional control, but there's this bottleneck of information. If the public knew a lot of this stuff, they would create more demand in different areas, and it would be able to be reflected in our market as well. But let's go back to this point. I kind of got broad again. So let's look at our little graph with our our balanced imaginary point. And this is a graph of blood sugar. And let's say when you first wake up in the morning, your blood sugar is kind of low, down below what it usually is. And you eat breakfast. And you eat breakfast, and very soon after that, it rises here, and then it will peak, and then it will fall. Okay? How sharp this curve is depends on how fast it's digested. So there's several things that will slow down digestion. Actually, let me draw our little yin-yang here again. And let me add another point to it that I did not add yet. Okay, yang, yin. Yang is fast. Yin is slow. Okay. If we go too fast, let's say this digests very quickly. It spikes, and it's more than our body can handle. It's like trying to drink water out of a fire hose. Your body cannot drink sugar out of a fire hose. So it goes up, and it says, that's too much. I can't handle that. So it releases insulin, which lowers our blood sugar so that it's at a level where it can be handled. But it causes an insulin dump. It says, insulin now, and you're like, oh, okay. Insulin, and there's so much insulin that it makes your body either burn or store the sugar, and it goes down lower than where we started. And then, let's say you don't eat, you feel shaky, and then your blood sugar will naturally come up even if you don't eat. Or you eat again, and then it goes down again, and then you eat again, and it goes down again. Either one is the brain, right? It needs, its main source of energy is sugar. So when our blood sugar spikes and falls like this, down here our brain is starving for sugar and we can't think clearly. So either we're not thinking clearly for like a long period of time while we're waiting for it to recover, or we're having these spikes, you know, like that, back and forth, versus maybe a more even, steady curve. Like, you know, let's say this is our highest point we would ever want, and our lowest point we would ever want. It goes up nice and slow, comes down nice and slow and smooth. And down here, you say, I'm hungry, I could eat, but I'm not starving, you know. So blood sugar actually has a big role in hunger. Now, when this happens, this spike here, we release tremendous amounts of insulin. And let's say, let's put some numbers on this so it's a little easier to follow. Let's say we ate 100 grams of stuff, and it's caloric, and that 100 grams of stuff goes into our blood, and it rises. It's too much for us to handle. It happens too quickly, and our body's regulating mechanisms say, turn it down. We release insulin very quickly. This 100 grams of stuff. Insulin, what does insulin do? Insulin, a lot of people don't even know what it does. It tells your cells to take up glucose. That's specifically what it says to your cells. Cells, there's too much of this, take it up now while it's here. Take it up, take it up, take it up. So, not just your muscle cells and your brain cells, but also your fat cells. Your fat cells are like it's like, it goes into your fat to be burned later as fat. But there's also other things, like when it goes into fat, it takes a lot longer for it to be burned than when it's as a sugar. But here, tells your cells to take up glucose. So if it's way too much for it to handle, you're going to have a lot more lipogenesis, fat creation, than in this situation. Let's say we ate 100 grams of stuff here. You have much more of it as actually burned and used at that moment versus stored for later. It's like in this situation, you spike and fall, and hunger comes again. This person is gaining lots of weight. Or if they fall down here and they're doing this, they're not gaining as much weight, but they feel like crap. So there's a lot of people that feel like crap, you know. So if you can balance this out, it's going to help a lot. So now what things slow digestion down? Fiber, protein, and fats. Okay? And then things that are very easy to digest would be sugar and carbs, carbohydrates. Now all carbohydrates are not created equally. You see, you look at the label on food and it says carbohydrates, 26 grams. And then underneath there's subcategories. There's nothing, and then there's sugar. And it'll say, like, let's look at that. See, 26 grams of carb, and then 14 grams of sugar. Okay, sugar is a simple carbohydrate. that is on the verge of being, you can just almost straight up absorb that into your bloodstream. But carbohydrates have to be broken down enzymatically. And they're very easy to digest. Your pancreas releases enzymes that will quickly break them down into sugar within minutes. A raw vegetable carbohydrate has a very long chain, and the enzyme can only break them off at the ends like this. And the longer the chains are, the longer it takes them to digest. Let's say I take a carrot carbohydrate, which is really long in its raw form, and I cook it. It breaks them up like this, so they're smaller. So a carrot, like when it's raw, you eat it and it crunches, right? You cook a carrot and you bite into it and it's soft. It's soft because those starches are broken down. It's very pliable. It's like Play-Doh. And each of those, and it tastes sweeter too. It tastes sweeter because the carbohydrates are broken down more. So each one of those chains can be attacked by an enzyme. So let's say you break that same chain. I don't know how many long it is. Let's break it in two. You've doubled the surface area, and you've exponentially increased the amount of digestion that can occur. That you've shortened the time exponentially. So this is one thing also about cooking. We don't want to cook every single one of our vegetables because it creates rapid. Even a cooked, like say like even a potato, can cause these spikes because we cook it to the point where it's mushy and soft, and all those carbs are broken down very, very well. Fiber is a carbohydrate that is undigestible. Let's say in our carrot that we just ate, that was raw, there's fiber there, and that fiber is the crunchiness of it. But if we can cook fiber and make it digestible. So you can break it down to where it actually does become digestible. So you've actually increased the bioavailability of the carrot. You can absorb more of it, but maybe that's not a good thing. Fiber hides hides the sugar from our digestive system. So let's say you have a bolus of food, they call it a bolus, where it's just a wad of digesting food in your small intestine. If all that sugar is shrouded in fiber, then it has a harder time being absorbed, and it takes longer, and all of it may not be absorbed. Protein and fat slow the emptying of the stomach. So if you eat anything that has protein in it or fat, like nuts or meat or things like that, that's going to take longer processing in the stomach. And the stomach is all about breaking down these two things. And so and also the stomach, when it has those in there, it sends the food out into the small intestine in small amounts instead of all at once, like it does if you had just eaten carbs. So if you eat carbs, there's no need for the stomach to even put that much acid in it to slow it down. So it just goes right into the small intestine, and that's where we get the most absorption. 85% of our absorption is the small intestine. So how do we figure this out though? How do we figure this out? So eat a meal with certain constituents in it. You look at it, it's got some meat in it, you got a salad, and maybe there's a starch there, whatever. Eat it and see how you feel throughout, the next 5 hours. And just do an experiment. Try a different meal and see how you feel. That high and then shaky feeling that's the best sign that you've gone too carbohydrate or sugar heavy. Fruit has sugar and carbs in it. It's good, but in too much fruit will cause these spikes. Now you can go too much on this side too. If we slow our digestion to the point, like let's say I just eat 2 sticks of butter. That's gonna my stomach's gonna be hurting because it won't want to empty. because there's so much stuff in there that has to be processed by the stomach, and it just takes forever to empty. And it's just not going to work well for my digestive system. It has to be balanced. So, does that make sense? This is more intuitive, and it's also based on how you feel. Different genetic populations have different ratios of these two things that their genes, that their bodies are designed to handle. So eat a certain type of meal, looking at these three things. Make sure you've got all three of them balanced pretty well in a way that fits you, and you should be eating very well at that point. So I think that kind of concludes this, unless someone has any questions about this point here.
Does the acidity of food have anything to do with the spikiness too, or not?
Yeah, acidity.
Because I can eat
Acidity.
an orange and feel different than if I would drink a half a glass of orange juice.
Yeah. There it is, right there.
Right.
Okay. So the juice.
Yeah.
So an orange, it's this whole complex structure, and you peel it and you eat it, and when you eat it, you don't just suck the juice out and spit out the orange. You eat the whole thing.
Right.
So the fiber actually shrouds the sugar, like I was saying, from your small intestine, and it will slow down the absorption. If you drink juice, bam, right into your bloodstream, because there's no fiber to protect it, which I think juicing is great. People do that a lot, but it should not be the only thing that's in there, because it'll cause these same spikes. It's actually a common thing that people experience when they're juicing a lot. So, any other questions? I think if people are juicing, I feel like they should use the fiber that they separate away from their fruits and vegetables in some way that's creative, that they can eat it, because it is food.
You can make a muffin really good.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And there's all kinds of different ways that, something is only waste if you don't know what to do with it. So if we can open our minds and be more creative, we can make all kinds of things.
But you wouldn't want to just have juice for breakfast and not anything else.
Exactly.
Right?
This is
that'd
why.
just be a part of it.
Yeah, this is
Right.
why. Yep. Unless you want to get there and you want to feel that way. It's not necessarily a bad thing. Fasting, and for example, like when you're fasting, your blood sugar stays not down here, but it's down here a lot. And it's a different state of mind. Like we're used to being fed every single day, 3 times a day. And maybe, fasting, it puts our minds in a more receptive way, in a more receptive thing. And that's why people, when they meditate a lot, they will fast, because it opens their mind in a way that's less expressive, more receptive. Less yang and more yin. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just, to do things in our society, we should be kind of hovering around our happy medium to function. But it doesn't say that we can't mix it up. Okay? So anything else? I feel like I've gone quite over the time, but no one's left, so that's great. Well, I hope this helps, and if anybody has any questions, you can email me. Email me at my office email. Schedule at Health in Balance, Cairo.com. It's really long. Okay? You can email me any questions about nutrition, and I'll give you my opinion. But now, my opinion is not gold standard. It's things that I've learned over the years and things that I've practiced and felt to be useful. Whenever you're making any choice, any decision, always stop thinking about everything you know, that you've heard with other people and all these things, and focus inside and focus on emptying your mind and just let the answer come. That's the best way to make any decision about something, especially if it's a big decision. We make small decisions all the time, like what to eat. All right, that'll do it.